The Panthers fought off a Carolina comeback, and Luke Kunin raises the ceiling for the fourth line.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Tuesday, September 30th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. So, Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on another edition of the show to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers. On today's show, we are going to discuss the Florida Panthers' 4-3 victory over the Carolina Hurricanes in their fourth preseason game, sweeping both games of the home and home. We're going to discuss the final training camp battles that the Panthers will be determining from here on out, especially the 14th forward position for the Cats. And we are also going to preview tonight's game between the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning, which will be taking place in Orlando, Florida at the Kia Center, home of the Orlando Magic and the Orlando Solar Bears, for the first of three between the Panthers and Bolts. So the Panthers faced off against the Carolina Hurricanes on Monday night against the Canes, and we saw the debut of the new scoreboard for the Panthers there. So great job by the Florida Panthers for committing to the community, and Broward County for helping the Panthers put this all together for a better game day experience, as we are going to see more changes to the arena and even outside the arena for years to come to make it a more hockey-friendly, fan-friendly place. So very excited for all the little projects that the Panthers and Broward County are going to put together in the coming years. So yeah, the takeaway, a few takeaways that I had from this is where the Florida Panthers got off to a 2-0 lead. Even though the Carolina Hurricanes did score two unanswered, and then it was a little bit of back and forth right before Jack Studnicka scored the overtime winner. One of his two goals on the night is the fact that the Florida Panthers, although they weren't facing a veteran-heavy Carolina Hurricanes team this time around, as they did last Wednesday when these two teams faced, is the fact that they were able to tilt the ice in their direction. And that's pretty powerful for the Panthers, especially the fact that they were able to draw penalties, including the end of the third period. They drew a double minor, which was first undetected, and then the Panthers were still able to get on the man advantage as well. Although there were times on the man advantage that they struggled to get the shots on goal, which that's also a credit to the system that Carolina runs, no matter who's playing those units for Rod Brindamore's squad. I found that was a little bit of a struggle for the Panthers, but the Panthers went to the box early in this game, and Sergei Bobrovsky, whether it's a preseason game, whether it's a regular season game, or Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, he prepares the same way, and making three big shorthanded saves on the first one, and then making himself look big while on his side, and making two big saves right before the ref was able to give him the whistle there to stop it really early on in the game in the first period for the Panthers. But other guys who were I was keeping an eye out for was Sandis Vilmanis, who returned to the lineup after the injury that he suffered in the third game of the prospect showcase that happened in Wesley Chapel just a few weeks ago, and now back to the lineup. We saw a lot of the speed that he brings to the table, getting a goal on the night, which was a little bit of them getting a interception in the neutral zone, and then Nolan Foote using speed, going to the right, and the Panthers really truly were going more of that north-south game on Monday's win, and truly being able to do that, which Nolan Foote was skating towards the circle, and then Sandis Vilmanis as the trailer, and then scoring on the backhand, which Freddie Anderson had a little bit of a hard time stopping those goals from backhand shots. The Sandis Vilmanis one scored through the short side, and then the Jack Studnicka one was scored through the 5-hole, which the Panthers were able to truly get their speed going on a little bit of a nice battle in behind the net right before Studnicka was set up by Mackie Samoskevich. Him and Jesper Bokus were truly battling it out on the end boards there right before the setup. So also great job there. And also on the third goal of the game by Brett Chorsky, which it was a little bit of trapping them in the neutral zone, and then Ben Harper chipping it up, and then Chorsky being able to get the goal pass. It was Quap who was in the goal crease for the Carolina Hurricanes after the goalie change, which Freddie Anderson played the first 40 minutes, and then Quap came into the game in the final 20. But Sergei Bobrovsky, like I said, he was outstanding. Cooper Black, not so much. He was subbed in midway through the second period, and then that's where really the Panthers were able to get the Hurricanes, were able to get the goals in. And it's funny because the Panthers even won a challenge for offside in that one, which Miles Fee and John Kangemi do it once again, which the Carolina Hurricanes were at least by a half a foot past the blue line when the Panthers challenged it for offside. It's funny because on Monday Night Football, the Dolphins actually challenged for a fumble and were unsuccessful. And I've been saying for years that they might be coming after the Panthers video coaches to help Mike McDaniel with his challenges, because I believe now he's 4 of 21, 4 of 20 now on challenges throughout his Dolphins career. But the Panthers do it again, where their video crew is just the elite of the elite in the NHL. But Cooper Black, not the greatest of games, getting beat constantly in the blocker, really deep into his crease, which you see Sergei Bobrovsky. He's 6 inches shorter than Cooper Black, but Sergei Bobrovsky isn't that goaltender who relies on his body. He truly does rely on his technique, which that's something that is a little bit of a struggle that we've seen with Cooper Black, which it's hard to move at 6'8" at his size. And he even said that he doesn't want to grow anymore, but whether it's closing in through that 7-hole, as they say, that those pucks have been those pucks were able to get through quite easily for him on multiple goals. Mike Benning, he has 3 goals throughout the preseason, but I found him in a little bit of a struggle once again. Was really slow to the puck when the Carolina Hurricanes were dumping it in, trying to battle, and then the F1 was there right behind him, and then right when they worked it back on the low to high play, he was caught like in the middle of in between the goal and near the circle, where Alexander Nikishin made a move on Sandisville Manis, and then getting a clear lane more towards the circle, and then Mike Benning screens his own goaltender right before Nikishin scores. And Nikishin not only beat Sandisville Manis not once but twice, the second time on the Robidas goal. He was a lot faster to getting in on the pinch to force the puck back into the corner, and then Sandisville Manis was a little bit of a turnstile right before Robidas got the goal to tie at 3, which the Panthers were still able to find a way to get the win in this one, where the Carolina Hurricanes had the puck over the glass to get on the power play with 23 seconds left in regulation, then carrying that over to overtime. Jack Studnicka, it's still a battle for him to try to get onto the roster. He's on a 2-way contract, so if the Panthers do put him through waivers, the cap hit is not going to count towards the Panthers cap based on what Studnicka is making. And him being a veteran, he's going to be truly helpful to the Charlotte Checkers, him and Brett Chorsky. So there's a lot of veteran help down there in Charlotte, which I mentioned. Both of those, Trevor Carrick, who's a big body defenseman. Chorsky is a big body forward. He's going to be playing heavy minutes for Jordy Kinnear and the Charlotte Checkers this year, as maybe a guy who could win a key draw and battle it and with the selective pressure that they make throughout on the walls, which Ed Jovanovski did a little bit of that tape breakdown for the Panthers and their pressure when it comes to the penalty kill. They go from the box whenever the puck is towards the outside of near the half walls, and then when it gets back to the point, you see it form more of that diamond formation, an ability to get your stick extended and to possibly block those high to low plays from when the puck is at the point getting it back to the net front, or even when they're trying to just throw one in and hopefully that and for the opposition hoping for it to go in. So the Panthers and their selective pressure, those guys like I mentioned, especially Brett Chorsky at his size, is going to be truly helpful once again for the Checkers, as he was spend time in Colgate right before making his way to the Charlotte Checkers. I also thought Jeff Petrie was one who we're going to see, who we're going to truly appreciate, where there were times where he was skating the puck back to the goal line, and then the ability to stop on the dime, and then because he's a right-handed shot, he's able to get that pass out from behind the goal line to get the support from the forward who's already at the half wall in the D zone, and then they don't necessarily have to have the first stretch pass out, and because the forechecker coming for the opposition, they can skate along on their own, and maybe they could make their stretch pass right as they're gaining the red line, so that even if they're not gaining the red line, it could at least be deflected off a forward waiting right at the blue line, so that they're not icing the puck and that there aren't those tired bodies on the ice. And another one that I was quite impressed with, Tobias Bjornfoot, of protecting that net front, sweeping when it has to, even if the Carolina Hurricanes were still getting their cycle game going, the clearing of the net front was truly there for Toby Bjornfoot. So he's gonna be your guy who's probably gonna be your first call up for the Panthers once again in the case of an injury or a body for a game or two. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss more about the final training camp battle rosters that I will be looking for, and how Luke Kunin truly raises the ceiling of that fourth line. We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And I love using FanDuel. It gives me so many ways to play. You build parlays, player props, and I've even been able to follow the lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting, and when you've got a little something riding on the action, FanDuel is there. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Once again, visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today to get started. Segment number 2 here on this Tuesday, September 30th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Tuesday. So that Kunin line, Kunin, Gadjevich, and Greer, that line was absolutely buzzing on Monday night. And the Carolina Hurricanes had 8 shots on goal in the first period, while the Florida Panthers had 6. But man, the Panthers, even though the Carolina Hurricanes were truly opportunistic on Monday, where they scored those 2 goals in that short span, only 3 shots on goal. So that's not going to look good for Cooper Black. Those 2 goals that he gave up on 2 shots there. So, but the Panthers tilting the ice 14-8 in the second period. Sorry, they gave up 3 shots on goal in the third period. They gave up the 8 in the second. They had 2 shots on goal for the most part in the second period, but then the two shots in a short span really helped the Carolina Hurricanes get back into the game and tied at 2 and take it to tied after 40 minutes. But the Panthers were still dominant throughout the final 30 minutes of the game, and that's kind of what you need when you're placing a goaltender there that is as inexperienced as Cooper Black in Monday night's game for the Panthers there. But I thought that the Luke Kunin line, Gadjevich and Greer, I thought that they were outstanding, really putting pressure on the forecheck as well. And like I mentioned, Luke Kunin has more than a handful of seasons where he's had double-digit goals. The thing that for Luke Kunin is that he's likely not going to be playing as much PK time as Tomáš Nosek, that's going to be hurting the Panthers in that area, because Tomáš Nosek, 51% last year from the dot during the regular season, and 59% is his career high in his final season in Boston. Luke Kunin over the years, 31% last year with Columbus. San Jose was 47. So Hockey Reference has the combined face-off percentage for him between the two stops, 46.6. So that just goes to show that he didn't really take a lot of face-offs during his time with Columbus. Actually, it says it right here. He only took 16, while he took a whole bunch with the San Jose Sharks. So he took almost 400 with them, but still under 50%. Sam Bennett is also one player who is not really high on his when it comes to face-off percentage, and he's going to be asked to play more of those PK minutes, more than likely, more than he's usually asked to do. But as far as the ability to put pressure on the puck whenever and the opposition in the opponent's zone, that's what I'm really truly looking forward to when it comes to Luke Kunin. And I do think that Gadjevich and AJ Greer, with how much meat on the bone that they have in their bodies and how much they absolutely bruise the opposition, which you got to also remember that the fourth line in the Stanley Cup playoffs, when they were reinserted in game 3 against the Toronto Maple Leafs, at 5-on-5, they were not giving up goals against. And that is the part that's going to be missed from Tomáš Nosek. But offensively, if Luke Kunin could still play at the production that he's been before making a stop with the Florida Panthers, that doesn't hurt. I would hope that it doesn't help hurt the Panthers on the defensive side of things. And yeah, the matchups are going to be a lot tougher with the third line going up a spot, where you're going to see Luosterainen, Lundell, and Marchand facing off at the team's best second liner. So when you're looking at Evan Rodriguez, Jesper Boquist, and Mackie Samoskevich as right now your third line for the Panthers, and which is possibly expected to change, that is really what the battles that you're going to be hoping to win. And with Luke Kunin and what he's been able to do prior to this, that is where you're maybe going to possibly see some high scoring games. And yeah, Sergei Bobrovsky is probably going to earn more of his $10 million than he already has. That contract is already worth it if you're a Florida Panthers fan. But yeah, that's going to be really crucial as far as how the Panthers stop goals against. And I'm not sure if they're gonna be in high scoring games, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. But also, like I mentioned earlier, Jesper Boquist and Mackie Samoskevich, they were feeding off each other well, being on that same line together. And Jesper Boquist playing center. Like I mentioned, he's played center before, especially he had to fill in for that period of time, especially in early November last year when Sam Bennett was out a few games. And so that's also, once again, more of those positional flexibilities of guys on the roster who can go back, who usually play wing, but can go back to center. So he's one of them. Eetu Luosterainen, Evan Rodriguez, Sam Reinhart. But I feel like this is going to be a year of more experimentation than ever when it comes to filling in at least the 3C spot with the guys getting elevated up one with the loss of Alexander Barkov. And it's still really tough to swallow for the Panthers here. But Studnicka Jack Studnicka playing the wing for the Panthers here and getting the 2 goals. Like I mentioned, the one through the 5-hole, Freddie Anderson, and then the overtime winner being a net front presence, getting multiple chances, and the coverage. It's a 4-on-3 in overtime, but a little bit late to react to get for the Hurricanes as he got that puck through Quap to get the overtime winner for the Panthers to win it. But yeah, I'm really excited to see how the Panthers go about their final cuts through the roster, because Studnicka, maybe he's like the first guy out. Noah Gregor has once again shown so much speed, as dude can fly out there. The Panthers have multiple guys who can fly and can handle the puck really well. Noah Gregor, although his ceiling is a bottom 6 player for the Panthers, he's maybe gonna be a guy who makes the team now with the situation that the Cats are in. I've seen the opposition not be able to close gaps well, and then if he gets a step on you, he's been able to drive to the net quite easily. There was one play that he had where he was going from the right circle and then cutting into the middle, and I thought that Freddie Anderson tripped him. It wasn't called, but we just saw a little bit of that burst of speed. And also Mackie Samoskevich, he was behind the D. He was in front of the Carolina D for at least maybe like 10 feet, and his ability to at least keep his momentum going from the D zone to the neutral zone, and then as the puck got past the Carolina in the neutral zone, he was the first one there. And it kind of once again reminds me of that play in game 1 against Tampa Bay, where Mackie Samoskevich was the first to the puck, and then it sets up Sam Bennett for that redirection goal to give the Panthers that early lead in the first round these past playoffs. So I like the combination that the Panthers have of speed guys versus guys who are bruising on the forecheck, like the Panthers do have on their fourth line there. So very exciting always to get a win. You don't complain about those, but the thing is that the Panthers young guys, which last night was a mix between veterans and young guys in this Florida Panthers roster, and we see guys putting it all out there as far as these training camp battles. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where the Panthers will be playing a preseason game from the Kia Center in Orlando, Florida. Will this be the last time that we see a preseason game from the Kia Center between the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning? We'll discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Segment number 3 here on this Tuesday, September 30th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Tuesday. As the Florida Panthers, it's the second end of a back-to-back. They flew out to Orlando this morning. Paul Maurice will be speaking to the media at 4:45 p.m. To discuss the lineup, what his mindset is prior to the game. And the lineup for tonight's game has actually been released via Florida Panthers PR. So the goalies that we are expected to see tonight are the tandem of Daniil Tarasov and Brandon Busey, which Brandon Busey has already had some time playing in the preseason. Also, Daniil Tarasov coming off that 40-plus save performance just the other day for the Cats against the Hurricanes. A nice rebound from him after that game in Nashville. So also we are going to be seeing the return of Tyler Mott into the lineup. He is one of the final training camp battles that the Florida Panthers will be having for, like I mentioned, Noah Gregor and Tyler Mott. He missed the remainder of one of the games last week, so he's okay. Also, Paul Maurice discussed the mindset of injuries during the preseason and say training camp is not the place to push injuries. And if I need any more information on Tyler Mott, whether he is a fit to the Florida Panthers, just paraphrasing this here, he said that he could always look back at the tape from his previous stops. So glad to see that he's even okay to play to begin with. So we're going to see more action from Jack Devine once again. Mike Benning is going to get another game for the Florida Panthers. This is going to be game number 4 for Benning. Brett Chorsky, like we mentioned, he had a big goal last night for the Cats, making it 3-2 in the third period. So, and once again, we are going to see other guys who have mostly played in Charlotte play tonight. And the Tampa Bay Lightning, as you can see here, if you are on the YouTube channel, the Tampa Bay Lightning will also be playing a mostly young lineup against the Florida Panthers. Jonas Johansson is going to be likely going to be the starter for the Bolts coming in tonight, and we're going to see another familiar face. And if you're an Orlando-based Panther fan or an Orlando-based Lightning fan, you saw Connor Geekie perform extremely well against the Panthers last year, especially in the third period, where it was Ken Appleby who came into the game last year in the third period, and Connor Geekie had his played like his hair was on fire in last year's game, scoring multiple times in that game. So you're going to see a lot of other regulars as well. So you're not going to see like the Victor Hedmans, Nikita Kucherovs, Braden Points. You're going to see more of the Oliver Bjorkstrands, Zemus Gergensons, who they saw in the playoffs last year. And we are going to also see up and coming stars, and I think this guy is a star. Gage Gonzalez in the lineup tonight, as well as JJ Mocher, who struggled in the postseason against the Florida Panthers last year in their playoff round. But this with the changes to the CBA and how many preseason games there will be, which, looking at it, around this time next year is when the 2026-27 season will be going on, which right now we're recording this as the Major League Baseball wildcard round is going on. And because ESPN is going away from Major League Baseball, this gives an opportunity for the NHL, not only for their 84-game schedule, but to push the season a week up. So ESPN, that opens up the avenue for the NHL here. But that comes with the less preseason games for each squad, going from 6 to 4 each year for each team. And that might hurt not only training camp battles, but possible neutral site games. And I'll be in the building tonight as the Florida Panthers will take on the Lightning. But this might be the last time that we see a neutral site game in Orlando, or neutral site games might not be a thing in the future for the NHL, as these guys will travel for one more road game throughout the year, which those two games, in the 84 game schedule added will be divisional games, because the 5 of your division opponents you see 4 times, and the other 2 you see 3. And it kind of makes the schedule a little uneven as far as like who you face this season. But it's going to hurt the fans who want to see hockey in different markets, like an ECHL market in Orlando for the Orlando Solar Bears. But this is also going to hurt the Panthers possibly in the future on training camp battles and guys getting ready for the season, because Paul Maurice did say that 2 to 3 games is kind of the sweet spot for the veterans to get ready for the year. But the Panthers they're not currently in their transition window period outside of their championship window just yet. But I'm just looking forward ahead for the Cats on what these preseason games and less of them could mean when the whole entire group gets older, and that you're relying possibly on a Jack Devine, Mackie Semiskevich, who's probably going to get a bigger payday come this year, and guys who are possibly ready to contribute on the cheap for the Panthers. And how many minutes are they going to get? Are they going to get only 1 or 2 games? Because like I mentioned earlier, Mike Benny is going to get his 4th game with the Florida Panthers in the preseason, which also goes to show how high they are on him. He's been with in pro hockey for a few years now, so that he's almost there as far as getting a call up to the Cats. But what's it going to be in the future as far as getting those games and at least getting a taste of playing against an opposition that might put a veteran lineup, like what the Florida Panthers experienced last week when they visited Raleigh, North Carolina, and was able to get their spirits very high and feel good about getting a win there, even if it doesn't count. So that's the thing that's good, that I'm not necessarily, I don't want to say worried about, but I'm looking at it cautiously for the Panthers and their future, because we've seen them climb the mountain, and although there's a lot of uncertainty this year, the next few years, when the older guys will need to be picked up just a little bit more as they start to age, how can the franchise prepare the young guys, even if it's not in full game action prior to the year with these less games? How are they going to be prepared? Which now it's going to be, it's multiple adjustments, a playoff salary cap, less games, more. Is it more rest for the players? We are going to see load management more than likely coming to the NHL, even though I don't necessarily like it. That's why I'm very down on the NBA, to be quite honest. But that is coming. Will it be one game for the veterans that they play under the new preseason schedule that we will see come next year? So maybe the youngsters will actually get their appropriate amount of games right before the tough decisions need to be made, which after Tuesday's game against the Tampa Bay Lightning, that's when we will see more of the roster cuts coming for the Florida Panthers, as now we will likely see that the group will be cut down to around 30 after today. So we will be breaking down more of that with Jacob Winans on another edition of Winans Wednesday, of who impressed most in their game, in the Florida Panthers game against the Tampa Bay Lightning. And then we will prepare for the weekend, as the Florida Panthers will take on the Tampa Bay Lightning 2 more times after tonight. But tonight is the start of that from Orlando, Florida. Once again, we will be in attendance for the game, and then we will likely have a post-game show after the fact. So make sure to come back here, as we will break all that down and more. But that's going to do it for today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.